Let's do Lakeview Terrace.
Oh, it's Lakeview Terrace
Which is the new film by Neil LaBute, who's had a very interesting and sort of strange career. He's a controversial director. He's been called various times, a misogynist and a misanthrope. And
that doesn't leave anyone else, really, does it?
Well, racist more recently as a result of Lakeview Terrace. Because he made things like Company of Men, Your Friends and Neighbours, which were kind of edgy and strange. Then he did Nurse Betty, which I liked very much. And what's that incredibly strange noise?
I think it's one of the cameras moving around to zoom in.
Oh, very bizarre. And then the most recent thing he did was he remade The Wicker Man, which was a terribly bad idea. And he remade The Wicker Man as a kind of strange feminist or anti-feminist parable. It's hard to tell. Essentially, having gone from being a cult in the thrall of Christopher Lee in the original, it became a cult of women into whose territory goes Nicolas Cage, but he is overwhelmed by their womanhood, and then in the end womanliness, and in the end they put him in a Wicker Man and set fire to him, like in the original one, only not interesting. So now he's back on form with this peculiar thing, and Lakeview Terrace is essentially one of those cases in which it's a B movie. It's a sort of straight-to-video thriller that just happens to have A-list credentials, very much like. Do you remember when Training Day? Because Training Day ended up being an Oscar-winning movie, but it was clearly a B movie, made for television thing, but it was made really well. And so, similar idea here. A young couple, he's white but interested in rap. She's black but interested in being, very kind of well-to-do middle class and setting up a family. Move into the eponymous neighbourhood. Eponymous meaning
Lakeview Terrace.
Thank you. No,
of the title.
And their next door neighbour is Sam Jackson, who's a policeman, and you think you'd be safe living next door to Sam Jackson as your next door. But of course, as is the way with these things, Sam Jackson takes against them because he doesn't think they're the right kind of people in the neighborhood. So there's all this sort of weird racial tension going on, which is to do with they've got a mixed marriage.
So he disapproves of the mixed marriage?
No, well, it's implied that he might do, but he generally disapproves of them in total. And he's patrolling the neighborhood and trying to keep the neighborhood together and gradually, relationships between them get worse and worse. The thing you need to have in your mind as you're listening to this clip is, did you ever see Unlawful Entry?
That's what I have to bear in mind.
Okay.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, but I was wondering whether you had seen that. That wasn't the question. Have you ever seen Unlawful Entry?
I don't think so.
Fine. Okay, in that case, you won't get any sense of deja vu with this at all.
Oh, great.
Here's a clip.
Abel, hold on. Look, and whatever it is about me or us that bothers you, we got to figure out a way to deal with this, all right?
So what do you propose?
What?
What's your agenda?
Can't we all just get along?
Oh, not Rodney King. You playing the race card?
Come on, man. This is getting a little out of hand. I need you to back off.
Back off.
Yeah, a little.
Or what?
So you keep saying stuff like that, like we're not welcome here, we should move. But we're fitting in just fine.
Says who?
Stay out of my life.
Stay out of your life. You have a good night, Chris.
So everyone who's seen Unlawful Entry is now thinking what?
Well, no, basically, it's a very, very similar idea that they move into a house and the next, the neighbours are cops, but of course the cop turns out to be sort of slightly psychotic. But what happens in this is this whole thing is spiced up by this actually rather well done, complicated racial politics. Now, some people have taken it upon themselves to say that the racial politics of the film are racist. Then they're not. It's a clearly stupid thing to say. I mean, for a start, Sam Jackson is unlikely to be involved in because he's a very, very astute, intelligent man who takes a very firm line on these things. But what it does is it's very interesting because it plays everyone against the wrong stereotype. There's one marvellous moment when the main guy is sitting in his car and Sam Jackson knocks on the window and he's scared because he thinks he's being mugged. Then it turns out that actually it's Sam Jackson who is the cop. And Sam Jackson then says to him, because he's listening to rap music, and he says, why are you listening to rap music in the car? He says, well, my wife doesn't like to listen, she hates rap music. And Sam Jackson says to him, you can listen to that noise all you like, but when you wake up in the morning, you're still going to be white. And there's this whole sort of, kind of strange inverted stuff going on inverted racist stuff going on in the dialogue. Now, inevitably with these things, there's a moment when it has to just go bonkers. And the moment comes quite late on in the film. And I was sitting there thinking, hold on to it, because that's the way these things work out. You get the kind of the broiling tension. If you look at any of these sort of urban horror films, something like Pacific Heights or any of them, it's how long can they keep this sort of, everything under control before it has to descend into silliness? Well, In the end, it descends into silliness with forest fires and helicopters and shootouts and nonsense and all that kind of thing. But there's a really good hour and a quarter of it in which it manages to keep a hold on itself. And I think a couple of things about it. I think it's a smartly written script. I think LeBute directs with confidence, and he demonstrates that he can do really good nuts and bolts putting stuff together. And Sam Jackson is just great. And there is something about Sam Jackson that he does have when he's on fire. He has a real presence. You think about him doing all those speeches in Pulp Fiction, for example, when he was doing, he's reciting the great long swathes of Tarantino dialogue, and you realise that what's impressing you isn't the dialogue, it's the fact that it's Sam Jackson delivering it. He's a very, very charismatic person. I know that you're sort of looking a bit glum because you and I met him once very briefly in Hollywood, and do you remember that?
The
Star Wars thing, and he was the very quintessence of not charismatic, but on screen.
That's only because, of all the things in the world, he didn't want to talk to us.
Exactly, that's exactly
Which is
right.
fair enough.
Yeah, but he's very charismatic presence. He's used very well in this. I mean, as I said, it is essentially a straight-to-video B-movie that just happens to have A-list talent in front of and behind the camera. But for a good 2/3 of its running time, I really enjoyed it. And when it went nuts at the end, I kind of thought it had earned the right to go a bit bonkers, and then it did the explosion. So I'd still love to see one of those movies in which it didn't go nuts in the end and was still a big box office hit.